Hello everyone and welcome back. So in today's video we are going to talk about useCallback, which is part of our React Hook series. In this video we are going to have a general overview about useCallbacks. We are going to look at how we can implement it and then how we can use useCallback to optimize our daily code base. So for this and more, let's dive into it. Alright, so use callback returns memorized function. Okay, so think about memorization as caching, just like we spoke about in our previous video on use memo. Okay, so memorization is basically caching. Okay, and in use callback we cache the function to kind of avoid recalculating on every render. Okay, so this basically help us or allows us to isolate resource intensive functions from being automatically run on every render. Okay, so use callbacks only runs when its dependencies update. Okay, and this can be used to improve the performance of our application. Now I spoke about this in our previous video, but then I'm going to go over it again. Okay, there is similarity between use callback and use memo. Okay, but then the main difference is that in use memo we kind of cache or we kind of memorized the value. Okay, and then in use callback we cache the function itself, not the value. Okay, that is basically the two difference between them. Now I have a code right here which I will take us through. Okay, and then there is a problem. We are going to identify this problem and then we will find the best solution for it. So in my application I've imported a couple of things here. Okay, so I've imported use state, which we are going to be using it here, and I have a component being imported here, which is the to-dos component. Now in my use state I've set up my state here, my count, and then my to-do state. Okay, and then I have my increment function and then add to-do function right here. Inside it I have my to-dos components being called here, and I pass in a couple of props. I pass in the to-dos, which is the list of to-dos. I pass in a function to update my to-do. Okay, down here I have my count being displayed here, and I have a button to increase my count. When you go to the component, right over here I just have the component. I destructure my props here, and in here I map through my to-dos, and I have a button to add a new to-do. Okay, so basically this is the application and this is how it looks currently. Okay, so if you look at it on the initial render, okay, the child render, which is the to-dos component, is being called. Okay, this one, right? So it's being called, right? And then if you study or if you take a look at it, we are using memo here. I made mention of it in our previous video, right? So what this memo basically does is it kind of prevents this application from re-rendering, okay, unless the props change. When there is change in props, then it renders. Okay, so it basically works like use memo. Okay, now let's take a look at our application. When I click on the plus, okay, the child component gets rendered. When I click on it again, it gets rendered. When I click on add to do, wow, it gets rendered again. Let me refresh. When I click on to do's, or when I click on add to do, you could see it renders. Right, now let's analyze what's happening. Okay, ideally we're expecting this component to render when the to do's is being is being changed, or when there is change in to do's, right? The function is a function, it doesn't change. I'm sure that is what most of us is going to be thinking, right? But then here is the case. When there is a re-render, okay, what basically happens is the functions are being recreated. The functions are being recreated, and once they are being recreated, it means the function has changed, and that's why we are seeing the change in component, or that's why we are seeing the component rendering on every render. The component being called on every render. Okay, so to solve this we have to use callback, because now clearly we could see that the function or the problem is not related to this to do. Okay, the problem is related to the add to do, because on every render this add to do is being recreated, which means the out to do that we passing or the out to do that we see on the first render, okay, it's not the same out to do we see on the next render, because it's being recreated or it's being created again when there is a render. All right, now to solve the problem, we are first going to import our use callback, okay, from React. And then what you are going to do is we are going to cut all of this, okay, and then we are going to use our use callback right here. And then inside it, we are going to paste our callback or our function, right, which is this one. And then it accepts a dependency. So I'm just going to pass in the dependency, which is count, right? Sorry, the dependency is to do, so not count. I'm going to pass in the dependency, which is to do, right? So in this case, we want to only kind of re-render or render this to-dos component again when there is change in to-dos, okay. That's basically what happens. And then it means on every render, right, if the to-dos doesn't change, because we have this callback function, this callback function has a cache value of our function, this function, okay. So the use callback is going to store this function for us. So when there is re-render, we are not going to recreate a function, we are going to use the old function, okay. And this is going to prevent re-rendering of the component when there is no change in our to-dos. So let's go back again, let me refresh, okay. Now when we click on our to-dos, you see we have the re-render, right? But when you click on count, you see nothing happens, right? Nothing happens. And this is the work of use callback, okay. So use callback basically cache our function, okay. Once it caches the function, when there is re-render, it doesn't recreate the function again because we have a cache version of it there. So we just use the cache version, okay. Yeah, so that is it for use callback. I hope now you understand the difference between use callback and use memo, right? If you don't worry, I'm going to do a separate video to compare both for you, okay. But now just know that use callbacks cache function, okay. During re-render, it just uses the cache value or the cache function, okay. And then with use memo, it's kind of cache the actual value, the return value, okay. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, kindly click on the subscribe button, like this video, share this video with friends, and see you in the next one. Happy coding.